Welcome to Pitch It To Me Podcast, a show about the subjective past, present, and potential future of flesh and blood design. Hey Joel, what's Enigma's favorite salad dressing?
I don't know, Clark. What is Enigma's favorite salad dressing?
Blue cheese! Today's episode will be about the Part the Mistveil limited environment. On Red Pitch, Clark cracks open the sealed format, while on Yellow Pitch, Fuzzy goes to architecture school and sketches his plans for the draft format. And on Blue Pitch, Joel pontificates on the new precedents Mistveil has set. You can find us across all socials such as TikTok and Instagram at Pitch To Me Podcast.
I'm Joel.
I'm Fuzzy.
And I'm Clark.
We're literally so employed right now.
Yeah, we are.
So if anyone's been keeping an eye on the updates in Turn Zero, I accepted a job offer, I think last week now. Yeah, last week. And tomorrow, Wednesday the 5th, is my first official day. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the updates. I'm just fucking happy to be making money again.
Yay.
Bro, you so deserve that.
And BT dubs, everyone. We hit 100 subs
Yay!
We're so back. Let's go.
on
Thank
YouTube.
you. Yes.
100 subscribers on YouTube.
Thank you, everybody, for subscribing to the podcast on YouTube. I know that we don't exactly do a ton to create video content on there. Like, we add some slides and help put some visuals up there for everything. But, you know, it's not like stills of our faces talking or anything like that. So we appreciate everyone who subscribes, who checks in on YouTube. And we also still care about our audio listeners and you guys tuning in week after week.
Yeah, we're still slowly growing as content creators, and the numbers are reflecting that slow, continual, constant growth.
One thing, as we move on to more podcasty business, I think we're really interested in hearing what guests you guys want to hear come onto the podcast. Obviously, there's the really big names that we're sniping for, people like a certain LSS devs like Brian Go or Carol. But are there any other content creators you'd like to see show up on the podcast? Anyone else that you think we would have a good time talking to, or would have a good time coming onto the podcast and talking with us?
Seconded. And then also, we have U.S. Nationals coming up, and Joel and I will be present in U.S. Nationals. We'll be playing, and hopefully we'll be playing in U.S. Nats all weekend. But if you ever see us, just feel free to come up and say hi. It really makes our day, right, Joel?
Yeah, you may or may not get a fist bump, a handshake, or a hug. One of your choice.
Do we have any of those extra might, agility, vigor tokens?
Oh, we got a grip of those.
Maybe.
We got a grip of those? Maybe if people ask nicely enough, you guys could have them on hand to pass out.
Yeah, so find us quick so we can give you the stuff that we brought for fans and whatnot.
Yeah. Even a couple of our fans have been trying to get fully signed sets of those, I've been hearing.
So with that, do you guys want to talk about the episode today?
Sure, yeah.
So this episode is our limited opinions. We like to talk about every time they release a new limited environment. We like to talk about it because we love limited, and there's a lot that can go into the design of a limited format. Everyone's a little different from each other. So we're talking all about today is part the Mistveil limited. So why don't we start things off with Red Pitch. Clark, you were going to talk specifically about the sealed format this season, right?
Yes. I liked the sealed format. I think it is also the format that I am probably the most experienced in when compared to draft. You guys have done a couple more drafts than me, getting prepped for Nats than I have. Though I will say I've done pretty good. I have drafted twice, and I went like 2-1 and then 3-0. So
That's pretty bad.
I'll definitely be given my opinions later. But pre-release was a lot of fun, and the sealed format was a lot of fun. In fact, people have said very, very nice things about the sealed format for Part the Mistveil. And so I think a lot of that is due to the fact that they made one really big change going into pre-release and going into the sealed format for Part the Mistveil, and that was that you don't get 6 packs to make your deck. You get 8 packs. And that is a very big change. That's 28 new cards that you wouldn't have had otherwise to help round out your deck.
Yeah, thank God too, because sealed before, like pretty much every sealed before then just felt damn near unplayable because you might have heard me say it multiple times in the past, but it's literally just a coin toss. Your performance for the entire sealed is locked in the minute you open your packs because more often than not, it's a little bit more forgiving in MST, obviously, because all of the Mystic heroes kind of share the exact same card pool. But like trying to build different heroes based off of what you pull, and like if you get, your Bomb Majestic, then you're probably more likely to win your sealed pool. And if you don't, then you're doomed. Pretty much. Like if your pool is just commons and rares or don't really synergize, or you have a bunch of yellows, then you're just screwed. There's not really a whole lot you can do because it's not like you have the ability to interact with anyone or change how other people build their deck. You're just kind of, left to your own devices within your own packs.
Yeah, sealed does tend to have that like chaotic energy where you're just based on what you pull in your pool. And if someone else's pool is better than yours, well, you're going to have a hard time beating that opponent. And there can be certain key cards, especially rare ones like Majestics, or back in the day, I guess it used to be Legendaries, when you could play Legendaries in your pool, where those can have a huge impact on whether or not you do well. But Joel, do you think having more packs has evened that out and made it easier? Or do you think that there's a higher chance for your opponent to pull that crazy bomb Majestic?
Both. So I felt, number one, I think with the Chi specifically, like having more options out of the Chi cards was really helpful because I can imagine getting stuck with like 2 or 3 drop in the oceans when you're trying to play, when you have a 6 Zen pool, feels really stupid. But being able to have more than just generic like blue Mystic cards, because those like are pretty bad unless you have other cards that synergize well with it. So overall, it felt a lot better because the chances of you having a cohesive deck for any of the heroes felt a lot better. Even if you didn't have any Bomb Majestics, you'll still maybe have more decent rares to boost your consistency and not rely on these like power cards to determine your performance.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned that because I think we need to remember that as it kind of feels like ever since Brian Go joined the team, they've started putting a lot more care into their draft environments and like how they construct their sets for draft.
100%.
And I don't think that they have, since then, they have had to have a format based around sealed, right? In terms of like a competitive limited ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's been draft every single time.
What are you asking? Because I know they've had sealed skirmishes. Like there was for Outsider season, there was a sealed skirmish.
Okay, so like it has still happened in Outsiders at least, it sounds like. But I would say like it definitely feels like they want to make it just draft going forward. In which case, sealed, you're primarily going to see it in 2 formats, which is going to be the team format and pre-release. In both instances, I think giving more packs to give people more of a choice on playing the hero that they want to play is generally better. Like when you sit down to play a pre-release and people are learning cards for the first time, they should really be looking at the hero cards and saying, oh, I like this hero, let me build a deck around this hero, rather than, well, let me evaluate my pool and like see where my strong reds are. And that's a lot harder to do at a pre-release for brand new players. And so actually giving the pool the ability to actually be good for any of the heroes is very strong for pre-release.
So to parrot what you're saying back at you, Clark, you're saying that by having a stronger pool, because there's more cards and more options, it allows a more new player-friendly environment because they can sit down ready to play whatever hero they want to play. Like if they only feel passionate about Zen, as an example, they're a lot more guaranteed to have a playable Zen pool if that's what they want to play at the pre-release.
Exactly. I do think that there is a trade-off that comes with it, which is there's a higher power level in Limited now, which I'm not sure if that's a great thing. It could be a good thing. I just don't know if it's a great thing. Fuzzy, you've talked a lot about liking how Limited is a far lower power level environment, but the power level in Sealed has felt pretty damn strong.
For this format?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like having the 8 packs really makes a difference and you can run lots of really strong cards in your deck. when I went 4-0 at Collector Legion, like Clark, you saw, like I was able to put 5 of these red attack reactions in my deck that I don't think I would have been able to find if I only had 6 booster packs. So I'm able to have a more consistent deck. I'm able to focus on certain strategies and synergies, and those options are really important. It can also really depend on the set itself too, right? Like we kind of have to think about like how much of it is just part the Mistveil sealed has really strong cards versus having 8 packs makes the deck stronger, you know? Because I haven't played with 6-pack Mistveil sealed. That would be kind of an interesting experience to try.
I think another thing that the 8 packs really allows for the part the Mistveil format to do is give you a lot more sideboarding opportunities.
For sure.
Into different matchups. So certain cards I think really stood out in the limited environment as being things that you wanted to sideboard in based on which hero you were going up against. Actually, I'm not sure exactly if there was anything that really screamed sideboard this in for Xin that you wouldn't just want to have in your deck normally. I think Battlefront Bastion was kind of meant to be that card, but then it was just so standout good in every deck that like it's more like we'll take out your blue Battlefront Bastions against new rather than put them in against Xin.
Well, New did have specific stealth cards that were able to target both Enigma and Zen, where you have these like Desires of Flesh. It banishes attack action cards, or it wants to banish attack action cards in order to gain you life. Those cards would probably not be that good against Enigma, especially depending on color, where I'd be kind of happy to play the yellow ones against Zen. It kind of depends on your hero, but you're talking about like sideboarding against specific heroes, right? And how relevant that is in this format. And I think it is something that was intentionally put into the card pool in Mistveil Limited. Having 8 packs instead of 6 does help you explore those options and get you thinking about it more.
Yeah, I definitely don't know if I would have had like the 2 evasive leaps, that extra pick to pieces that really helped me feel like I had play into the different heroes. I also think that it's very interesting because it felt extremely important for the new matchup to be able to sideboard out your blues especially. So with New and her ability to play your blues, there were blues that you would kind of not mind giving to her and blues that you really never wanted to give to her. I found that particularly interesting in the sideboarding of going, well, what blues am I willing to take out? So I would take out quite a few of my blue 3 blocks simply because I didn't want New to get those.
My experience has definitely been better. I don't think there's very many times where I felt like I needed a block against New. I think I could just like go face pretty much every turn and not be punished. Just because if they didn't have like Double Trouble Red or some like really annoying stealth card, but if it was just like banish 1 card on hit, then for the most part it didn't really feel like I needed a sideboard. But that's what Evasive Leap would be there for, and if not, then I wouldn't really worry about like, you know, sideboarding out some good blues, because that can also hurt your threat density, because Neil has a lot of 3 blocks. So if there's a deck that you would be at the risk of being fatigued, it's you know, either New or Enigma.
Yeah. This was also the first time that they put a hard deck max and minimum at the same number. Your deck had to be 30 cards for this format. How did that feel?
I think it felt perfect. Like honestly, the ability or losing the ability to be able to go like just the pile of 3 blocks, which was basically in Outsiders, the limited format was really devolved into play Azuri and play every 3 block that you could get your hands on, and you'd pretty much win every single sealed event. And in heavy hitters, they kind of dealt with the issue of fatigue as well by incorporating more 2 blocks. So the fact that you know, you have heroes like Enigma who can probably fatigue anybody if they had the access to run 40 cards, being dumbed down to 30 makes it a lot easier to deal with and makes New have a much more clear-cut win condition through deck damage.
Yes.
Because everyone's at that base of 30 cards.
I really like that. I think it was also important bringing into context the 8 packs, right? If you really want to add those 2 extra packs, then you're really going to say, all right, you can't just run everything that's good in your deck. You need to make some choices here.
For sure. I thought it was a positive change as well.
Yeah, just being able to sift through your rares and commons, like, man, I really can't run all of these, was a good and bad feeling, it felt like.
Yeah, because before you would definitely be so constrained on choice. You're like, well, these are the best cards I have. Guess I'm playing this hero. And then it's more like, all right, well, what are the last 3 cards I put into this deck? Well, I guess this marginally good blue card that kind of works into my strategy, but it's a 2-block. I guess.
Yeah.
That's how you used to build your deck. And now it's a lot more like, what do I cut? I'm at 33 here. I need to cut 3 cards. This is hard. Do I take out the 3-block or do I take out the synergistic 2-block?
And it's funny how other formats historically have had really segmented card pools where, like, once you pick your class, you might only have literally 33, 35 options that you can legally play in your deck. And with 8 packs, and this is a hybridized format. It feels weird to say that because there literally aren't hybrid cards in the set, but because they all share a talent and there's at least 2 or 3 of those talented cards in every pack, then the card pools are a lot more overlapped and you have larger card pools to play every time you sit down to play Sealed.
Yeah. I mean, I love how you mentioned that because ultimately my 3-0 pre-release on new was just off of the back of having 2 red pick-to-pieces,
Jesus.
a very good generic Mystic blue pool, and then just going dagger stealth card against an Enigma every single turn.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good. Last thing that I want to mention here about Sealed is that they made a slight difference in the pricing around pre-release, which isn't necessarily about Sealed itself, but I think it's something worth talking about in this pitch.
For sure.
Normally, they would give you a promo pack that would contain...
I don't think it's fair to use the word normal. Sorry to cut you off, Clark, but pre-release pricing and promos has been something they've been continuously tinkering with for the last few sets, and this set is just a continuation of that tinkering, and they've done something like a little bit different every set.
If you want to put it that way, Fuzzy, I would say Flesh and Blood is constantly evolving about every set, every single time.
For sure.
It feels like a game where there is no normal, but I would say that the pattern that has emerged is that they give you a promo pack with some foiled tokens, the hero card, and you would then maybe get 1 card for showing up to pre-release, right? It's a cold foil, it's a rainbow foil, but it would be a card that you could like run in a deck, but you normally wouldn't be able to actually put it in your pre-release deck, right? In heavy hitters, this was the cold foiled Stake Acclaim?
Yeah.
Starting stake?
Starting Stake. I was close. But now, in Part the Mistveil, in the promo pack, there were 2 playable cards that you could put inside your pre-release deck. A rainbow foil promote equipment and a cold foil chakra at red. Both would be completely random though, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, this was the first time they've ever done something like that.
How did that feel?
I think it was a little bit marginal as far as the impact on the game. It was kind of rare for me to play my chakra cards in pre-release, not just because they're not necessarily for the hero I want to play, but they might not be the right color, or they just might not quite fit into the strategy I was trying to run. But I did play the random rainbow foil like Kikois often. Like I was like, oh, rainbow foil headpiece, here we go, I could play that. It was easy for the equipment to be usable, in my opinion.
I mean, at least they did it with a rare instead of like a majestic or a really powerful like universal common or rare or something like that. So for the most part, I don't think I cared that much. The only thing was like if someone had a cracked like new pool and then also got like her high heels or her arms piece and then just puts her in a really strong position. But I mean, because Sealed is not like a competitive format yet, like it just makes it more fun to play and gives you more tools to like play the hero that you want based on what you pulled and what you got from the promo pack.
I love how you mentioned that because they also took something away, which was the undefeated prize. The Part the Mistveil pre-release did not have an undefeated prizing like they have had in sets in the past, which I think is actually quite healthy for the game. I don't like it when there's so many rewards for top players and good players doing well.
Sure.
Because it's nice, especially at communal events like pre-releases, to see everybody get the nice shiny cards.
And I think that competitive aspect is also very much related to how there's a world premiere for this set where some players got to play a week in advance, and some players who are really following the scene are like watching and studying and learning from others who have the opportunity to go to world premiere. And so pre-release doesn't quite have that like, all right, everyone starts from scratch feeling that other sets might have without these world premiere events.
Yeah.
I agree to an extent. Like, people like myself, I've been looking at all of the cards pretty much since they've been revealed and seeing like what would help me have the better chance in the limited environment. Mm-hmm. But it seems like that over time, they've just been reducing the incentive that there is to play at armories, let alone like these extra events. Like they took away the the 90-day XP for like armory grinding. A lot of the pricing for like the tier 2 events have been dwindling down, and now pre-release there isn't even any pricing. So it just feels like if you want to take the game seriously, you have to be flying around the country for these larger tier 2 events, or you kind of have to like wait for your own like respective like RTN or PQ season. Like there isn't a whole lot of incentive to like take the game seriously, at least on a casual level, or people who don't have access, like I said. But with that being said, I think we've talked enough about sealed, so let's move to the more of the core focus of the episode in our yellow pitch with draft. Fuzzy, what do you got for us?
All right. I'm sure we all have a lot of thoughts on draft. I've had the luxury of getting in a few drafts with my buddy Joel and some of other local SoCal guys. Mm-hmm. Like we did 3 drafts this Sunday, and we've been hitting up all the local armories. So we've been able to do like half dozen drafts each. Right, Joel?
Yeah, it has been a lot because we did 3 in one day, and then I think we've done at least 3 during the week leading up to that. So yeah.
Yeah. We've done so many drafts that we can't even keep count of how many drafts we've done. We're serious drafters because we got to get ready to draft on the national championship circuit. So
yeah, as a reminder, my draft for Nats was so bad. Like I went 7-1 in CC last year. Yeah. But I went 2-4 in draft, which is like ridiculously bad and I even practiced too, so I had to like really step it up for this next Nat season.
Monarch draft was crazy. I'm not going to fault you for doing bad at Monarch draft.
See, I didn't want to use that excuse, but yeah,
I'll give it to you.
That limited environment sucked ass.
So here we are getting ready for Nats this year with what I think is at least a cooler limited environment. The thing I want to start off with that I think defines the limited environment for Mistveil, I think I want to say it's the pack distribution. The pack distribution is special because it has lots of devoted slots in the booster. Like, there's always a droplet card. I don't know why they felt the need to make sure there was always a blue that gets pumped by 2 if you play a blue card. But, like, that's something that always shows up in the booster. And when you have really consistent boosters, it's easier for you to read signals. There's always a chi card. There's always an equipment. There's always 2 rares separate from those other things. So you can read these signals really easily, and that can have an impact on your draft. And so there's no excuse for me not knowing what my opponents are drafting anymore.
I should probably learn this for Nats too. I did not realize those were set in. I knew that like there's a chi card in every pack, and is there an equipment in every pack? Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And a foil,
Yeah.
You don't know what the equipment is always going to be.
Well, yeah.
Which is why I think it's actually really important to take the equipment when you see it in this one, rather than like letting it wheel.
Depends, but yeah, equipment's pretty important.
And there's lots of important cards in this set. Like, it's important to grab chi eventually. It's important to grab these equipments. They're strong equipments too. Like, I think in general, the equipment in this set are stronger than most limited sets. Like, think of like Iron Rot being like the gold standard, but these cloaked Keikois are better than Iron Rots, not only because of the hidden information that you're not giving your opponent, but also because you can block it at any time, like a D-React, Even like the Aqua line gives you a block one and an effect on top of that, and those effects have strong meaning. They're not slouches, Not to mention, like, these core class equipments that can really define your draft pool. Like if you have the stilettos for new, you're doing great.
Yeah, it feels like the equipment is super impactful in this set. Like for Zen, like if you don't have the mask that gives you a combo card or the boots that give you a tiger in your hand, like I feel like you're already at a disadvantage.
For sure. Those boots are so good.
Same with new. Like you obviously want both of those. Like if you ever get like a double trouble or something that cares about reactions, like not requiring a card in hand or being able to trigger like the reactions on two separate stealth cards is pretty powerful. Enigma, I feel like you just want anything that gives you extra block or extra wards. It's like less stringent, but you still need equipment.
Well, even her arms are like surprise go again on an attack. It's cloaked even.
Yeah.
So it's like they have to play around it even if you don't even own the equipment. But the power you get from being able to suddenly give something a power and go again, and you get to block 1 damage in the future, it's huge value. I think that also kind of goes in line with how few class cards there are. I've mentioned it a little bit before. It's this idea I'm totally obsessed with where there's just fewer class cards in the pack. You have to take more generics. And for this purpose, I count these Mystic cards as generic, where like everybody's fighting for the same cards. They have different interactions with those cards. Like Gravekeeping is really good for new. That's really a new card, but anyone could take it because sometimes a 1 for 5 is just good value that you're willing to play in a lot of situations. Or like Evasive Leap being this defense reaction that like Zen might be the least likely to play, but he would still totally play a red D-React if he had to, and there weren't a lot of other good cards in the pack. Very serviceable, especially when it comes to counterplay against other heroes. In this set, more than any other set, I found myself drafting sideboard cards because of how good they are. These silver bullets running around in draft. As new, I can draft pick to pieces, so it's a lot harder for me to lose to Enigma. And if I draft these Desires of Flesh, it becomes a lot better for me in my matchup against Zen. And sometimes these sideboard pieces can be practically my primary game plan, where I can rely on them heavily enough that I can pick them higher than cards that I would play main board in every game. Now that might not be the right strategy, but it's something that I've been exploring in this set that I've never had the desire to explore in other sets.
I think it's also interesting. I've been looking for the right moment to bring this little fun fact, but did you guys know there is not a single hero specialization in this set?
I did notice that.
I did not notice that.
It makes me very upset, actually.
And there's a really, really narrow amount of like Mystic Illusionist, Mystic Ninja, Mystic Assassin. Like, there's not a lot of cards that actually fit for just these heroes. It's not really about draft, but you know, it was tangential. It's very interesting because a lot of the power for them is in these sort of generic cards like you're mentioning, Fuzzy. I want to point out again, in Sealed, I was able to go 3-0 with a new deck that was just very oriented around having strong generics and a really strong blue Mystic pool.
Now, I still think the strong cards for each hero are in their class pool. I'm not exactly arguing that like the key cards for each hero are found in the generic pool, but I do think especially in draft, you're going to have to fill your deck with generics in order to make it work. And you're going to have to be clever about how you use cards that other heroes might not be able to utilize in the same way.
Well, I'd say for Zin, like, it's Pouncing Key and Key Unleashed. Well, I guess those
And
are the
Untamed
class cards.
Yeah. Like Mystic Ninja and Ninja cards being like in the same as far as draft is concerned. Like those are the cards that I'm looking for to go into Zen. I guess like Water the Seeds is really nice in Zen, but it can also be really nice in those other heroes, like giving a Spectral Shield +1 or giving your next dagger +1. Like that's a very real effect that's not hard for the other heroes to utilize. Having a 1 for 4 go again is not bad.
Yeah.
And having a surplus of blues lets every class play Battlefield Bastion as an attack if they wish, Blanche, Fact-Finding Mission, or whatever it's called, the 2 for 6.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good generics in this set.
So reading signals just becomes that much harder.
I think it actually becomes that much easier. If there's so few class cards, you can look at a very early pack and you can see, okay, how many ninja cards could I relatively expect here? And then you can say, well, how many are here? And then that can kind of tell you what the person immediately to your right just drafted.
Right. Since there's so much of a focus on the generics, like that makes up so much of your card pool, I would imagine that would have an impact on hero spread. Like with Monarch Draft, you could famously have lots of prisms, and Prism would still be strong enough to play, even if there were 4 Prisms, maybe even 5 Prisms in the pod, because all you needed was a couple good Illusionist attacks, and then you'd run a lot of blues. You didn't necessarily care what the blues were. You could just make use of generics well enough that the pod could support a large amount of Prisms. Here we actually have large amounts of generics and Mystic cards that fit along with people's game plans. What do you guys think the ideal spread is for heroes in this set? Because so far, I haven't really seen it lean one way or the other, but there's been flexibility as to how many. Like, most of our pods have gone 3-3-2, but as far as what's the hero that most wants to be one of the only 2, or is less playable when they're one of 3 or one of 4, like, what do you guys think as far as what's the ideal spread look like?
I think with Zen, because I've primarily drafted Zen into my drafts, even 3 feels really tough, especially depending on how far away they are from you. 4 is like you're all losing.
Yeah.
So you're basically playing 80% generics, which just feels really bad. You don't have a lot of like Tiger generation or Tiger buffing. 2, obviously, you're feeling great, and it just depends on how many combo cards you got. But because he's so easy to play, and I think Enigma is actually going to be harder to play, and therefore less people playing her per draft. So Zen is naturally going to be picked more. So I don't know. I feel like the ideal number would be 2, but there's going to be probably 3 or 4 every draft if you're not reading signals carefully enough.
Yeah, the sort of pattern I've been seeing in our local draft environment is like people don't want to draft Enigma because she's hard and difficult and complicated to play. And so people don't. And then the few people who are willing to play Enigma get these really cracked Enigma lists.
Sure.
And they end up doing great. And I think Enigma has a really hard time with 3 people in it, because even with 2 people in Enigma, if you don't get like the right red auras, you can actually end up in a really, really rough spot with really, really bad lists. In a similar vein, though, Zen is kind of the same way. And in a similar vein, Nu is kind of the same way. I think all of them want to be the hero that's in 2.
Sure. And that's normal for draft environments. I guess to refine my question, which hero gets punished the most for being a 2 of? I think Zen is a fair answer, but like all the heroes...
Oh, punished for being a 3 of, you mean?
Yes, that's what I meant. The punished for being a 3 or 4 of. I think because there's recursion pieces in the set, that actually makes everything a lot more flexible. Like if I have only one good combo card in Zen, I'm not doing very good. But there are tools available to me to really make use out of that one combo piece.
Yes.
Like the headpiece that Zen has that lets him put it back on the bottom of my deck.
Mask of Wizened Whiskers.
Yes. Or the Chi card that lets me, Preserve Tradition, that lets me put a card from my graveyard on the bottom of my deck so I can reuse it.
Super clutch.
And they're just little advantages, but they're there. The fact that there's ways for you to double down on what single power cards you have, I think makes the draft a lot more flexible, if you know to look for them.
Yes.
They're like salvage cards, right? Like you can salvage your draft by having these cards that allow you to focus up on the single cards that you have. And it's something I don't see a lot in other formats. It's part of what makes this draft format so interesting. There's also the variance of Chi cards and the different ways that you can get value out of them. Like the one that gives you Go Again has really high variance value, because there are some hands where you're like, oh, this fixes my hand. I'm able to play multiple attacks specifically because of this card. I can present this much more damage because I have this Go Again Chi card. But there are other ones like the Homage to Ancestors, which is really reliable. It always gives you 1 life. It never affects the board state usually, but that 1 life is never going to hurt.
And it's playable on any hand in any scenario.
As long as you have another blue, yeah. It's the most easily played, one of the most easily played Chi cards.
I think the best one so far is the Go Again one, the Path Well Traveled.
Really?
Specifically because if you are a 3 of hero and you're getting stuck with like Droplet or the 1 for 3 that becomes 1 for 5 or 2 for 4 that becomes 6, if you get stuck with any of those, you can use those as starters and give it Go Again with that blue card, buff it in reaction speed, get Transcend, and then be able to use your hero power. For Zen, that's a really wide turn because you can, if you're doing the 1 for 5 or the 0 for 2, you can use like Akara, your Tiger +1, and then combo card, whatever, continue your turn. And I imagine it's the same for Nu, where you start off with it, go into a dagger, and then go into a stealth card for like a 3 wide turn. So that is mostly what I like to play around if I see that card specifically. And then if I don't, I'm usually getting stuck with the like +1 because the homage to answers gets, snapped up pretty quickly. So that's what I would prioritize the most, like with the chi, because like you're gonna get stuck with these generics whether you like it or not.
The fact that you can draft around it and thus like form your game plan around it, I think makes it better. Like if you can get multiple copies of Path Well Traveled, so you have like more consistency in your deck to give that go again, then you're a lot more comfortable taking cards such as like that rare that draws you a card if it transcends. It's super good, specifically with Path Well Traveled.
Yeah. I'd also say that draft is really different from sealed, primarily in the fact of like there is less chi for each individual player.
Yeah, like I've started thinking a lot about like when is it correct to choke the chi? So in this format, because you have to play a 30 card deck and you have 42 cards that are going to go into your pool, assuming you want like 4 equipment, that means that you can never play with more than 34 at one time. So carry the 1. You will have 8 cards that are either sideboard options, which are very relevant in this format, or wasted picks that you're not going to play at all. And sometimes there's a part of me that wonders if I have extra picks that I can use specifically to take key resources from other players, like chi cards. Like, I might take 7 chi cards in a draft, not because I want to play 7 chi cards, but because every chi card I take is one that opponents won't get. But I haven't had a chance to really try this strategy, partly because the drafts have also felt really tight in and of themselves, where if you're one of 3 heroes in a draft, then you really want to take every card that you can and be willing to play it. Maybe some couple sideboard options, but I've found that if I'm playing Ninja, I still end up having to draft some Illusionist and Assassin chaff that I'm not able to play, and that 8 card buffer, I'm just using it in order to make sure that I have a playable draft. But I'm wondering if you know that you're one of the 2 ninjas or the 2 assassins, the 2 illusionists, if it gets more viable as a strategy to choke those chi resources from everyone else and try to prevent other people in your pod from being able to transcend.
I think it's also really important to know where the other players are in relation to where you are. I had this one Zen draft where I had a really hard time grabbing chi. So what I did instead was I just focused on the 1-for-4s with Go again, right?
Yeah, Zen as a hero definitely seems he's the easiest to play without any chi cards in your deck.
Yes, but also you do want chi to go get your good combo cards that you like built your deck around. But for me, I had such a hard time of knowing when do I draft the chi. And what I should have done was realize, look, in pack 1, I was grabbing a lot of reds. So there's probably no Zens to my immediate right, especially if I was getting it on the wheel. So I should know that in pack 2, I'm going to be cut off from a lot of the reds I would want to grab. And so I should be looking to grab my chi in pack 2, not in pack 1, based on sort of where I can expect the other Zens taking my cards to be placed. You kind of need to know when are your power cards going to start getting choked so that you can use that opportunity to pick up these role players in your deck that can make a big difference in the consistency.
For sure. Definitely seems worth thinking about in this format.
Draft requires so much context to make decisions. Like it.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the time, it just doesn't seem worth talking about, even though I should, because I need to prepare for every possible
It
scenario.
seems like nonsense. Like what I just said seems like so much fucking nonsense.
But it's going to come up, and I'm like, fuck, maybe I should start grabbing the chi in pack 2 because this is exactly
But
what
also, like, when do you get your blues?
Right.
Because you need blues to transcend, and you need good blues so that you can pitch and, like, have good blue block 3s. But then you also got to be like, wait, do I also want these to be my tiger generators?
And like always, so much of the draft is based on your other drafters knowing what they're doing. Because if they don't, and they're not thinking about any of this, then you don't have the privilege of thinking about it either.
Right.
Like,
Bro, someone's going to sit down and be like, I am forcing Enigma. And then to their right is, like, Pheno Black.
yeah. Or even just like you have a draft where like your pick 2, they pass you like the best Zen card, and then your pick 3, they pass you the best Zen card, and then it dries up after that, after you've committed to Zen, right? Because they weren't thinking about what signals they were sending. They just got a really cool card, pick 4, and they're like, oh, I'm going Zen now. And suddenly you have 2 Zens side by side because one person wasn't thinking about signals too much. And that can hurt both of them.
But in that way, I would say this is where the point I brought up is actually really important. You find that your reds start getting choked in the second half of that pack. Okay, that means that in pack 2, I'm really going to want to prioritize getting those reds.
Yeah.
So that in pack 3, where those reds are going to dry up a little bit, that's where I can take my blues and my transcends and my role players.
And there's also a softer version of that, which is like, I take what I need. Where if like, now that I have a bunch of reds, I should be looking to grab blues and cheat cards and other things anyway. Like, even stepping away from like where people are seated and what you think their people are playing, there's just a matter of like, for my draft, I need to make sure I check multiple boxes. And if I have a lot of this box, I'm going to go for the other box, which is like not as strong and as critical of a strategy as what you're talking about, Clark. But I think it's where a lot of players is like mind goes, where like, well, naturally I'm going to need this thing if I already have so much of this other thing.
Yeah. I just want players to recognize that, like, based on seat placement and pass plate and like where people are passing, you may be like, time for me to get a lot of my reds, and then there's going to be no reds for you. Or like, time for me to like get my blues or my transcend cards, and there's not going to be any for you because you should have been grabbing them at a different time. Again, like what I had realized was I wasn't grabbing transcend cards in pack 2 when that was my chance to do so. I was instead getting like these blue block 3s that I ended up not running half of them because I wanted my blues to do other things for me.
Yeah, I think I disagree because like with Mistveil, I think there's so many cards that are color locked at blue that there's going to be a larger amount of them. So like you get punished a lot less for picking reds early because you're eventually going to find like, even if it's the the 4 for 6 card, like generic mystic
blue
card.
sky.
Yeah, deep blue sky. Like even that will be playable because you have the reds that kill people. And because when you open the pack, you have access to at least one cheat card in every pack. That also punishes you a lot less for being quote unquote greedy in the first 2 packs. So I found myself prioritizing these reds because you really need those, like especially as Zen, you need those to be able to beat Enigma with these like 4 power breakpoints and have the threat density like right when you need it to kill New before she decks you out.
Sure, but then there's always the conversation of like, stay open or force. Because I think for Zen, it's very easy to be like, there's the red combo card, time to force. And I think that's a little bit harder to do on the other heroes.
So I have one last question for you two before we move on. Who do you think is the strongest hero in draft? Is there a strongest hero in draft? Does it depend more on like the frequency of the hero in the pod? Like, is whoever's the 2 of, are those 2 the strongest decks, like almost automatically? Like, who were you the most scared of in Part the Mistveil Limited?
I'm going to answer who I'm most scared of first, which is Enigma. Because I think there's very few people that know how to pilot those decks correctly. And there's always going to be either 1 or 2 in every pod, and they're going to frag. And so it's going to really change the dichotomy of how the other 2 heroes are going to like have to answer that. And it's just going to make for some really, really annoying pods at Nats, I feel like. But I think the actual strongest is probably Zen, and that's why he's going to be drafted the most in every format, or in every pod.
Interesting. So you would say that the default strength is going to almost immediately give way to like metagame that punishes those strongest heroes, quote unquote?
Kind of, yeah. Because like if 4 people are going Zen and they get like 2 combo cards each, and they're all trying to fight the Enigmas, and the Enigmas have the best cards, then it's like Zen being the answer to Enigma no longer becomes the case. It's just like, how well can the news deal with the Enigmas or whatever? It just seems like it's going to get really messy.
Sure.
I do not think there is a strongest hero. I think it generally comes down to play. I think this might be the most balanced, limited format we've ever had.
I think I would agree that it seems very balanced.
I mean, the Zen matchup can sometimes just be the dice roll. Like, whoever gets to go second and, like, have the better tempo.
Yeah, but you know what? Like, that's also balanced by the fact that there's a surprising amount of non-blocks in the set, and that screws up, like, lots of different matchups. Like, if I'm Zen versus Zen, yeah, like, I probably don't want to go first. But if I go all out in turn 0, I can scrape a lot of damage off of you just because you didn't have blocking cards in hand.
Yeah.
Or you really didn't want to block with your 1 combo card or something. And I'm able to get a lot of value out of that turn 0.
There's so much skill expression both in how you draft your deck and how you play that deck that I feel like this is exactly what they were going for. Mm-hmm. Especially in a high synergy set like Part the Mistveil. Because it's a high synergy set, I do lean towards agreeing with Joel. The decks that have the lowest player count are going to be stronger because they have more synergy. But like what you said, Fuzzy, at the beginning of this whole pitch, because there's so much generic, so much mystic, so much power encapsulated in those, that even with a bad, quote-unquote, class deck, you can still have a very strong mystic deck that could be good enough to get you there in a lot of matchups if you draw well and play to the strengths of the deck. Mm-hmm. Droplet, go again, drop a Battlefront Bastion for 7. That's a good fucking hand wherever you come from, man. I don't know what to tell you.
This is wherever you come from.
Okay, fucking...
You could be a spooky illusionist lady or a prostitute.
You could be Zen. Like, it's a good fucking hand.
Yeah. Well, thanks for talking draft with me, everyone. I'm excited to hear what our viewers think about draft in this format, what their hot takes and hot plays have been. I think let's move on to Blue Pitch. Joel, I want to hear about the future and what this could mean for limited design.
Yeah, so for Blue Pitch today, I'm going to be talking about like the new precedents of what MST is doing for limited and what it could like for the future. And because it wasn't brought up earlier, I just want to ask really quick, which of the like goated limited formats do we like more? Do we like heavy hitters more or Part the Mistveil more?
Ooh, good question.
And before you guys answer, I'm going to preface this by saying a lot of people liked heavy hitters for like the mid-range soup that it brought to CC for a little bit at least. And it was hailed as one of the best limited environments, if not the best, since the very first set. And James White conversely said that he was most proud of Part the Mistveil for all the cool stuff that they're doing within the set. So I'm wondering, like, how do you guys feel about either of the two?
I might be really biased just because of what's been going on in my life, but I felt more exhausted playing Part the Mistveil Limited than I have playing Flesh and Blood in a while. And again, it might just be because I haven't got enough sleep the last week for other personal reasons. But the amount that I've been enjoying Part the Mistveil, I think is not quite there compared to how much I enjoyed Heavy Hitters Limited. But that's not to say that like I'm trying to diss Part the Mistveil.
I think it comes down to what kind of player you are. Are you the mid-range soup player or are you the synergy player? Because I think if you're the synergy player, Mistveil by and far away is the better set. I think there is way more synergies. I mean, even in the generics, there are synergies, right?
I do like that about the set for sure.
And even like the role player, there's like one or two big role players, and we still find ways of seeing really synergistic, interesting ways of using them, right? Battlefront Bastion, I think, is the perfect example. This was supposed to be the generic 3 for 7. And yet, it's so fascinating being able to block alone onto flow to prevention. Like, there's so much complexity in how you block with this card. I would also say that, Fuzzy, your strategy of drafting for heavy hitters was force KO every time. I wonder why you are spending a lot more mental energy in Part the Mistveil.
I didn't quite say that way.
That's actually word for what you said following your RTN win. Just saying.
But I've also done more than just that one RTM where I forced KO, you know? Like, I have played other heroes in Heavy Hitters Limited.
I also think Heavy Hitters Limited had more glaringly obvious issues. Most notably, like certain heroes feeling really out of place or needing way too niche of an angle for them to be really valid.
Yeah.
I think like Fatigue was still too viable an option of just like, you don't have enough damage to kill me. Deal with it. Like, I don't think that's a super fun way of limited games ending.
You're saying that about heavy hitters?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't quite agree with that. I think Fatigue often becomes relevant in Part the Mistveil, and in Heavy Hitters you had lots of 2 blocks that stopped you from playing Fatigue in a lot of ways. Like, it still came up, and I like it when Fatigue comes up occasionally. Heavy Hitters hit the sweet spot for me.
I mean, for me, it definitely didn't. Fatigue felt like way too valid of an option because people would overdraft the 3 blocks so that they had more blocking power than conceivably everybody else.
I mean, in mid-range soup, like,
Yeah.
3 blocks are good.
That's kind of what I'm saying, right? Is like those cards almost became like power cards simply because they said 3 in the bottom right. And I don't know if I exactly like that.
That wasn't my experience either. I don't think fatigue was nearly as viable in heavy hitters as it was in Part the Mistveil. But I like both of you guys' perspectives on that. I personally think heavy hitters was better, strictly because there was more heroes, which is a good and a bad thing. But I think having the different choices and the different like the bombs were all different. Like if you got a Golden Sun, now you've unlocked the ability to play Victor, whereas you're probably going to be drafting Betsy for the majority of the draft. And it was kind of like a mini game that gets unlocked. It's kind of like a game of TFT Fuzzy, if you know what I mean. Like
Teamfight Tactics?
Yeah, Teamfight Tactics. It felt like there was a random instance being a power card for one of the tertiary hero or the secondary heroes, like Victor, Olympia, and Reinar, yeah. So for me, there was a lot more complexity there. The mechanic overpower was a lot less overwhelming than it was in Bright Lights, where it felt like I still had options and I could play around it more so than in Bright Lights.
Sure.
And the fact that, there can be like 4 of one hero out of 3 heroes in a draft just feels really awful to me. So I think the lack of choice is pretty big on my mind when I'm playing Mistveil. But not to say I don't enjoy it. I'm really excited about it. And I think I have been performing well. And there you get rewarded for the reps because there's less choices, if that makes sense.
I do feel like Mistveil is a very tight draft because of the lack of class cards, where you really feel like you're competing for a small amount of resources because there's specific power cards that I'm really looking for. I think Heavy Hitters was a little bit more flexible, where I'm like, I want a lot of 3-for-7s. There are a lot of 3-for-7s. Other people want them too, but it feels like there's kind of a lot to go around. Whereas like with Zen, I really want Untamed. And I might only see one even if I'm drafting Zen.
Yeah, that card's so gassed.
Or like that really cool Waxing Spectre, Waning Spectre, the like 2-for-4 red ward card in Enigma.
That card's
is
also
like
annoying.
So good. But like
Hold on. Which card?
it's like costs 2, it's an instant.
Haze Spectre.
Haze Spectre, yeah. Like that's one of those like signals for me that I'm looking for in Enigma. And it goes from like really good cards to like lots of playable, mediocre synergy-based cards that make up the bulk of my draft. I go very quickly to seeing that there's not a lot of cards that I'm super excited about in the draft, and you have to be creative. Maybe that's why it feels a little bit tiring for me. And I can see why people would really enjoy that, and I want to enjoy it, but it feels stressful.
I mean, I'm definitely sinking my teeth into it. I love Mistveil Draft, and I love all the nuances to it. I love how I really feel like I could win any game based on strategy.
Sure.
Like, going in, everyone was saying, it's a rock, paper, scissors, right? And then I went 3-0 playing new into Enigma every single time, which was supposed to be the rock bashing the scissors. I'm supposed to lose, and yet here I am, like, very clearly working around this.
Yeah, I totally agree that rock, paper, scissors is not highlighting the nuance that the format can really hold.
I think the nuance in draw and play is better in Part the Mistveil than it was in Heavy Hitters.
I would agree with that.
So I want to move on to talents, because as Fuzzy pointed out earlier, this is the first time that all heroes share the same talent. But it's not the first time that all heroes play the same cards. Because we've had Bright Lights very recently where even though some heroes cared about some cards more than others, like Tekla with Evos, Max with the Hyperdriver synergy, and Dash with pretty much every other item, we haven't had a set since then that that 3 heroes are pulling from the same cards. So I want to talk about that for a little bit. How does it felt fighting for the same like generic Mystic or generic like Transcend cards to get a good draft?
I think it has resulted in Mystic being kind of a shallow design space in my mind, where like it plays with blues and it wants you to like play the blues, but I don't see Mystic doing a whole lot more than that. I think Light Heroes and their Soul was a more interesting design space. The stuff that Earth, Ice, and Lightning saw were also pretty shallow in their own, but if Mystic's the only talent in the set, I think they could have had a little bit more going on for it. There's also like the fact that you have to pitch a chi card in order to do your chi stuff. I guess that is pretty inspired.
Yeah, putting the non-block back in your deck.
Yeah.
But then also giving yourself the ability to, like, have the really reliable hero power in the end game.
Yeah.
Right? The Enigma, like, quote-unquote Kodachi lock versus Nu's ability to, like, have this really explosive in-game turn with her chi.
Yeah, I guess chi are pretty cool. I forgot for a second about chi.
I think fighting over chi has been frustrating in a good way to me. Especially in draft, because everyone wants the chi, and in draft especially, there's technically only 3 per player, so if you want more than 3 in your deck, you're gonna have to, as a way, take one from somebody else. I think that's a really interesting idea in order to set up these powerful late game scenarios.
I've also seen the reverse where, like, in one draft that I ended up winning, I grabbed, like, 3 or 4 chi, like, right off the bat. Because that's, like, if you want to stay open, grabbing all of the chi keeps you open.
Yeah.
Just as a stress test. And it seemed pretty good because I had really reliable Zen combos. But I think I was bailed out because no one was, like, really I think there were maybe, like, 2 or 3 Zens and not all of them, like, where I was just in a good seat to get combo cards. Because otherwise I think grabbing chi early is pretty stupid. But I think enough of them wheel so that everyone around the same time, even if, like, they each just pass a chi, like, by, like, pick 6 or 7, they've gotten the cards that they want out of this pack, and they're like, okay, I should probably grab at least one of the chi, and then everyone usually gets it. But I wonder if there's any rogue strategies of just, like, grabbing all the chi to starve your other opponents.
I think it definitely exists. It's really interesting, and I kind of love how the Mystic talent gives so much power to these blue cards and to the chi cards specifically. I think it's more leaned a bit more heavily into, like, Nu and Enigma than it is into Zen. Like, I wouldn't do generic Mystic Zen, right? I think Zen really needs his class cards.
Definitely.
But I think Nu and Enigma can both sort of play just, like, 20 cards, 20 blue cards, 5 transcend, and then just some good red generics, and have a very solid deck.
Yeah, you can just go numbers goblin on in your draft and just have a really good, generically good attacks. And I feel like Nu, her ability is so unique because you can just, like, essentially eat your opponent's deck late game. It's just ridiculous how easy that is.
Yeah, and so if you don't get the strong class cards, like, the talent and how robust that design space is in the set kind of gives you enough to still have a powerful deck in and of itself.
It's also funny how there are really interesting cards that you have to play around in every matchup. Like, I get anxious every time I cast Passover or Preserve Tradition because there's that tiny chance that they have the counter to it and I'm about to lose my chi card. So I'm always like, Preserve Tradition. And
But then
like,
they lose their chi card. It's fine.
unless they don't.
That's why Double Transcend is so powerful, because you can be like, Passover? Well, I'm gonna preserve tradition, and then also homage. Get fucked, buddy.
Yeah.
Stop your thing, and I transcend.
So they're like things that you need to look out for against every hero that can be tricky. That's like one way that the heroes sharing a talent affects the draft.
Yeah. I love how you brought up the Bright Lights comparison, because it is really distinct from Bright Lights. This feels so different in terms of, like, what cards you need to pull from in the shared pool. In Bright Lights, I think it kind of became obvious that you were just sort of looking for certain cards per hero. But in this one, like, all of the Mystic cards are good in pretty much all the heroes.
Yeah, like, I found myself wanting some 3-for-7s or 2-for-6s specifically for Enigma, just so I can have, like, a really big finisher so that I can clear some auras. And with Nu, I would want that, like, 0-for-2, so that if I get taxed or for whatever reason, I can just send a cheap 0-for-4 at the end for some extra damage. So, for the most part, I've really been enjoying, like, playing with these Mystic cards and being able to still be really flexible in who you're locking down for the draft. But I don't know. It doesn't feel like Mystic is very well defined outside of draft. Like in CC, it doesn't feel like I'm playing like very many Mystic-centric cards. So it feels like it might be another Uprising situation where Draconic just kind of it combos with itself and really nothing else. Like you're going to be using very little of the, if any, of the generic Mystic cards.
No, I really feel that. Like, I don't think I've seen a single deck that uses, like, the droplet set.
Yeah. I think the only one would be, like... I feel like the only couple examples would be, like, Cosmic Awakening, the 9 for 20, potentially, and Levels of Enlightenment.
The big Majestic.
Yeah, just because they're so absurdly strong. Like, that's really, really it.
Yeah.
Although, they are just kind of draft commons. There's lots of cards in every set that aren't really played. Like, I'm sure there's lots of commons in heavy hitters that aren't played in any of those heroes.
Yeah.
But I bet, like, there's some commoner builds where you could play some of those, like, droplets and then stick a hiss on it.
I mean, sure. I've definitely been doing some of that, but...
Yeah, we're all getting our list ready for that commoner, Pitum, online armory. I'd like to just move on to the Arsenal Zone.
Our Arsenal Zone is the part of the podcast where we all talk about a card that we've been thinking about lately for good, bad, or whatever reason. Clark, do you want to start?
Sure. I want to talk about a card that I don't like very much in this set. I want to talk about Sigil of Solitude. Sigil of Solitude is an illusionist aura with ward 4, 3, or 2 that says at the start of your turn, if you control another illusionist aura, destroy this. I don't like this card very much. It just doesn't really do a lot. It's sort of like a D-react that you can put on the board as a one-card play and then pass. Mm-hmm. So you sort of have a block 4 floating, which I guess is cool, but like, it's not, because the way that everyone tries to get around Enigma is by throwing lots of weak attacks at you. So you kind of want to keep your higher board numbers around for longer so that you can attack with them. So it kind of says, hey, put down Sigil of Solitude and then protect it with some Spectral Shields. But then the opponent can just pass and you lose your Sigil of Solitude, getting no value off of it because you kept your other auras around. It just feels so at odds with like what Enigma's trying to do. I think maybe there's a world where, like, it's good into Zen, right? Like, maybe Zen ends up throwing an Untamed or a Flex Clause at the start of turn, and you're like, ha ha ha, free block 4 already on the table, I'm feeling great. But it, like, doesn't really do anything for your board state other than be annoying and make it awkward.
I think there's some room for this card to be pretty good in Limited, and I've heard some of the other drafters we were playing with kind of be up on it, but... I know at first glance I kind of had the same opinion where, like, if it can't stick around and play with my other auras, but its goal is to sit there and try to soak as much damage as possible, then it seems like hard to play around.
It also blocks too.
I agree. This card fucking sucks. Specifically, it doesn't have Go Again, and it's not an instant.
No Go Again, no instant, all these issues.
But I think it does a good job in... Because I don't think you ever pass against an Enigma if you play against this. I think you're just throwing if you do that. So I think it's good for that reason, because you're forced to attack into Enigma anyways. And Zen's 4 breakpoints are really good for this, because the 4 breakpoints are usually starting the chain with, like, Companion of the Claw, or Untamed, which is, like, probably your second or third attack. Flex Clause too, yeah. So you're going to see those relatively early. There's not a lot of 1-for-4s or 2-for-4s that you see at the end. So I think it could be good for that. And it's up to, the Zen player from there to, like, sequence it right so they actually lose value on this card. But I think there are some instances where you would just slam it, especially turn 0.
I don't know. It's pretty low on my draft priority list.
Sure.
So, I like it. Joel, what about you? What's your card?
So my card, I chose Artifor, which is objectively one of the strongest cards in the game. And as a result, I've been seeing a lot of people, like, bringing up the conversation of, like, okay, is this the set where Artifor gets banned? And I was just thinking about, like, the previous decks that have kind of taken this card and abused it and made people think, like, man, maybe this card should get banned, being, like, Fuseless Lexi, release Phi and maybe a couple others of them that I'm missing.
I mean, a little bit of Leviathan?
A little bit. Like, I think Levia, the only way she beats KO is if she maneuvers both Blood Rush Bellow and Art of War to like be the more aggressive brute in that matchup. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about it because I don't think it's worth banning. I think it's a really strong, like, generic piece of like power that otherwise Zen I don't think would be very strong, or at least not stronger than Katsu. And I like that. I mean, I think it's just an interesting like relic of LSS's past because I don't think they're printing a card like this ever again. It just doesn't fit anything like it's just has so much power, so much versatility, so much modality within one card that it like almost deserves to be legendary in some ways. I don't know. I just really like the card, and I like being able to play with it after so long of playing like heroes that don't use Art of War.
It's bananas how much synergy Art of War has with Zen, because not only is Zen having an umpteen amount of little zeros that could all be pumped for one from Art of War, which is already just crazy levels of synergy, but also that he puts fake ass cards in his hand that you can still banish to draw 2 cards is also insane levels of synergy. I think if Art of War did like only one of those 2 things, I probably still run multiple copies of it in Zen just because of how like clutch that effect is. But it does both, of course. Like I would run like 8 copies of Art of War if I could in Zen. It's just like those 2 cards, Zen himself and Art of War, were just like meant to be together. They're soulmates.
Definitely.
I'm gonna be at their wedding crying, so happy for them as they spend the rest of their lives together. And if they ban Art of War, then that would be messed up. Love isn't real.
I mean, if they ban Art of War now and not during Lexi meta, like I would be seriously questioning LSS's decision making.
You know what's one of my favorite Art of War plays? Findall's Tunic. Or Findall resource. Art of War. Banish a card from hand, draw 2 so I can block from Arsenal. Diabolic for 6.
To block?
Yeah.
Sure.
That's a good play right there.
So you're saying you Arsenal Diabolic Offering of your of your own free will.
Well, hold on. It's a 1 for 6 if you draw a Dread Screamer. That you get to keep an Arsenal.
If I rolled my eyes every time I felt the urge to, they would be out of my head right now.
Defensive Art of War is a good play. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
No, defensive Art of War is never good.
It's a last resort. And
I literally turned off Dorinthia counters. Like Dawnblade counters off of them.
Did you win the game?
Good. No.
Right, because defensive Art of War is not a play you do if you're winning the game.
It's not the first thing I want to do with Art of War, but I like that I have that option.
Yeah. As an option, sure. It's just never an option you take if you are winning the game. It's not so much that
it's obviously death throws at that point.
Yeah, it's not so much that you defensive Art of War and it loses you the game. It's more that like you are losing the game if you find yourself in a position where you're playing defensive Art of War.
Anyways, what's your card, Fuzzy?
I have a card from Mistveil Limited that I think is underrated. I'm not telling you it's good, but I think people...
I swear to God, if I get another Sky Blessed Kimono or whatever the fuck it's called.
Koi Blessed Kimono.
Koi Blessed Kimono.
No. I'm not giving you repeats here already. We're like so new in the season. I'm not repeating cards in this fucking set yet. I think this card is probably rated generally at like F tier, never play it. But I'm arguing it's actually C tier, sometimes play it sometimes.
Okay, hold on. Go through Part the Mistveil right now.
I'm so mad right now. I just know it.
I feel like you could tell what it is.
Solitary Companion.
No.
Fuck. Is it a new card?
It's Yellow Water the Seeds.
Oh, thank you, Joel. No, it's not Yellow Water the Seeds.
Fuck. Hold on.
It is a specific card in a specific color. I'm just gonna let you guys...
It's the draw card Emissary.
No.
Oh. Then I'm out of guesses.
This has to be a new card because it's fuzzy, right?
It is a new card, specifically from Part the Mistveil Limited.
Ooh, okay.
It's a card that I think most people will look at and never play, but I think it's actually playable.
Yeah, I have no fucking clue.
Okay. This card is blue.
I knew it. I'm just kidding.
Blue Evasively.
Wait, I did know it.
I know.
That's not a new card. What the fuck? It's generic.
NEW.
Oh, I thought you meant newly printed.
No, all the cards are new.
Like as in not a reprint. Blue Evasive Leap.
This is why we say nah, forehead.
So, Evasive Leap is a generic defense reaction that pitches for 3 resources in blue and blocks for 1. Now, blocking for 1 is usually not something you're excited to do, but if I told you there was a card that could be played practically at instant speed to get around news attack reactions, that also turns on transcend cards and does not cost an action point, that's a lot of reasons why you might want to play a card. And in a pinch, I'm not saying this is going to be at the top of your list, but you can run this deck and be relatively happy with it because you're able to transcend off of it without spending your action point. Like, you don't actually have to like play a blue stealth card and swing for 1 without go again, or play a aura with no go again. Like, you're able to transcend on your opponent's turn and then have that chi ready to go on your turn and get around some attack reactions or block a pesky Crouching Tiger or something to save your auras. I think Enigma's going to play this card more likely than other people's, but our testing group was pretty happy with it, surprisingly, because it was able to line up some mediocre plays.
A testing group, huh? Yeah, that card was actually really strong. Brian Hefner almost fatigued me with that card. That plus Drop in the Ocean. Basically blocking for 1 on Mikakara and then saving like a bunch of his auras. And like, I didn't have a very good like Zen deck, so I literally almost fatigued. It was really tough. That's a sleeper card for sure.
Again, C tier, not A tier or B tier.
I guess if you arsenal it.
Yeah, why not?
But like, bro, saying that card is good anyway feels so wrong. But like,
I'm not even saying it's good. I'm just saying it's better than you think it is because it's not absolute trash.
So in the grand scheme of playable cards, it's probably C tier. In Enigma, I think it's like B, maybe low A tier. Just because.
No.
Yes.
A tier? No, that's insane.
Yeah.
Because you have to play blues to turn on your transcend cards. And this card does that at instant speed without costing an action point. Like, and it's defensive like she wants. So I brought a copy to sign and give to each of you.
Let's go.
Which you can put in, I don't know, your constructed decks.
Okay, let's go.
1 for you and 1 for you.
Thank you, Fuzzy. I'll cherish this and think about it for all my drafts.
I appreciate the fact that you thought of giving me a gift.
And that's our episode, everyone. Let us know, are you liking Mistveil Limited? What are some sleeper cards that you think are underrated or overrated in the set? We want to hear everything you have to say, so make sure you say it. Hop on our Discord, hop into the YouTube comments. Let us know what you think. And thanks for bringing us to 100 subscribers. We love all of you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Pitch It To Me podcast is hosted by Fuzzy Delp, Clark Moore, and Joel Recinos. Our executive producer is Talon Stradley. Music by Dillon Hulse. Logo by Han V. And sound mixing by Christopher Moore. Last but not least, we'd like to thank you, the listener. Thank you for tuning in. Please give us a follow on your favorite social media platform at Pitch It To Me podcast.